Illinois 21, South Carolina 17. And how I want to kick off this video is doing this. Whatever Bret Bielema was doing over at Shane Beamer, just wow, it was. I can't even take myself seriously when I'm doing that. I watched that happen as Bret Bielema again is like, it's not flapping his arms, but he's raising his arms doing the substitution sign, and he's looking over at Beamer, and you can tell he's taunting him, and then Beamer just totally loses it. And then it pans to the sideline where Bielema is just smirking, and that smirk is the sign of, oh, I'm in your head now. Like, I'm in your head. That moment right there was, I think, the epitome of Illinois' season when Bielema did that. Illinois is not a kind team. They're not a easygoing team. And they don't make things easy for themselves. They don't just make things hard for their opponents. When I look at Illinois this year, getting blown out by Oregon, blown out by Penn State, though that game was pretty close in terms of score, but Penn State was dominating the whole way. And when I look at the Minnesota loss and the rest of their schedule, I know that they are not one of the 10 best teams in the country. I know that for sure. But then when I look at the 14-point win over Michigan, when I look at the 7-point overtime win over Nebraska, their complete depantsing of Jalen Daniels and Kansas, where they made Jalen Daniels look confused. He didn't know how to read Illinois' defense. When I look at the Rutgers game, where they won on that Hail Mary-esque play, and all these other things, I think to myself, oh, and also the way they beat South Carolina, this team's clutch. This team's well coached. And this team does a pretty good job at getting into their opponents' heads. They did that against Nebraska. They hung around with Nebraska, got in Nebraska's head, started to win the trenches toward the end of the game, and then boom, it was overtime. It was game over, and Illinois won a top 25 matchup. They got in Jalen Daniels' head. They got into Michigan's coaching staff's head. They executed a fake punt that was absolutely brilliant, completely coached circles around Sharon Moore in Michigan, who had a lot more talent, but still beat them by double digits. And I thought that the Fighting Illini, all season long have done their best at multiple points. And you know what the good thing about Illinois is? They're bringing most of their roster back, and they're using the portal quite nicely. For South Carolina, kind of is what it is. Disappointing finish to a season that at one point had college football playoff aspirations, but also it's Shane Beamer's best year ever at South Carolina. It's the best South Carolina season since the Steve Spurrier era. They've recruited at a high level. Lenora Sellers is developing into a star, and I think that while this Citrus Bowl loss has a little bit of a sting to it, at the same time, the future's bright. And before I get into any more of this video, we'll talk about some of the takeaways and the box score, and also how many of Illinois' players are returning here. I inquire you to like the video, to subscribe to the channel, also to hit the notification bell so that you can go live so that you know when I go live and release new content, so you'll get notified of that. Also, comment your thoughts on this game down below, and I want you to answer a few questions for me. Number one, how successful can Bret Bielema be at Illinois, realistically? As in, will this be his most successful season, or do we think that maybe he can go a little bit higher? Maybe attain the status that Wisconsin, let's say, had in 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20, even preseason of 2021, where Paul Chryst would just beat all the teams that didn't have top 10 or top 15 talent. Because in this new era of football, if Illinois can do that, where they retain most of their roster, don't lose a lot of guys to the portal, they recruit at a decent level, and they coach at a high level, they can maybe reach the playoffs, maybe a year, or maybe even more than that now that it's expanded to 12. Let me know down below. And as for South Carolina, What do we think of their program in the long term? Because 9 wins with the schedule they had, I thought was pretty impressive. I know it's pretty impressive. I mean, to look at the Gamecocks losing to Alabama by 2 on the road, losing to Ole Miss by 24, but Ole Miss when they were on in a lot of ways. LSU lost by 3 at home on kind of a controversial call, and then Illinois by 4. All of their losses were by 4 or 3 points outside of the game to Ole Miss. And again, Ole Miss at times this year had kind of a gear like Ohio State has right now, where when everything clicked, they would snowball you and it was game over. And I think that Ohio State, of course, definitely has that. Ole Miss at times had that this season. I think that there are maybe some more teams. I think maybe even all the teams remaining in the playoff have that somewhere, but Ohio State's the only one who showed it consistently. Ole Miss showed it against South Carolina, and they showed it against Georgia. So they showed it twice, but then they had those weird losses, of course. Anyway, we're not talking about Ole Miss here. We're talking about South Carolina and Illinois. And lastly, make sure to comment your thoughts down below and answer those questions, because you'll answer my giveaway. The 4 winners for my giveaway, $20 gift card overall, like for anything, a Visa, and then $20 merchandise store gift card. Those will be announced on my channel, on my live shows for the semifinal games, where I'll do play-by-play and color commentary. 2 of them, January 9th, the other 2, January 10th. And if you want to support the channel, the links to do that and also to join our Discord server are in the pinned comment and the description. But looking at this matchup here, Illinois looked lethal through the air. And also on the ground, you know what I was shocked by? And I was telling my dad this. My dad watches college football. He's a passionate Michigan State fan. And we're talking through this game as we're watching it, and I'm saying Illinois can't run on anyone. Like they literally could not run the football on anyone in Big Ten play. And their pass protection was awful in Big Ten play. Like Altmyer would get sacked 3, 4, 5 times a game, and he has legs. Like imagine if Will Howard got sacked 3 or 4 times a game with his legs, with his ability to maneuver the pocket. Now, I know Illinois has much better skill position players and wide receivers, or Ohio State does have much better skill position and wide receiver players than Illinois, and a better defense. So Will Howard's job is a bit easier. His pass protection O-line is also, of course, much better. Probably same with his run blocking O-line too, definitely. Because Illinois in the regular season, the Big Ten had like the worst, or one of the worst offensive lines in the conference. They were moving. They were moving South Carolina's D-line. A D-line that I thought was one of the best in the country for much of the season. South Carolina only had 1 sack and 3 TFLs. Illinois had 2 sacks and 5 tackles for loss. Gabe Jacas had 3 tackles for loss. Illinois averaged 5.2 yards per carry. Josh McCray had a long of 60, 114 yards, 8.8 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns. I know that South Carolina didn't have Raheem Sanders. I think they also had some other opt-outs for sure. I don't think Illinois had many opt-outs at all. I know that Zachary Franklin played. Pat Bryant didn't play in this game. He opted out. And that made it even more impressive that Altmyer was 13 of 22 for 174 yards, a touchdown, a pick, 7.9 yards per carry, and he had an 87.6 QBR. Lenora Sellers had a good game, 24-34, 260, 7.6 yards per attempt, and a touchdown. Really what this game ironically came down to was the fact that Alex Herrera missed a field goal, that Shane Beamer wanted to run a trick special teams play that Illinois defended very well, and that Illinois scored touchdowns. They didn't have to kick field goals. And you look at just some of the box score things here. Illinois was 0 of 1 on 4th down. Yes, but they were 8 of 12 on 3rd down, converting 66%, 66.6% of their 3rd downs, or 66.7% technically, of their 3rd down attempts. South Carolina was a bit less successful at 9 of 16, and they were 1 of 3 on fourth down. So they had one additional turnover on downs that made up for the additional Illinois turnover as an interception or fumble. Both of these teams were very close, and that was not exactly shocking to me because I picked Illinois to upset South Carolina. I released that on Twitter. Don't worry, guys. I also picked Alabama to beat Michigan and Baylor to beat LSU. So it's just to show that we're not perfect here. But I did pick this to happen with the thought process of I thought that Bielema was a better coach than Beamer, that his staff in many aspects was better. And I also thought that South Carolina's offense and Sellers was a little bit overvalued, just a tad. And also that South Carolina's D-line is really good. Their secondary, a lot more questionable, and they haven't faced many good passing offenses this year. South Carolina hasn't. I mean, they played Ole Miss, really good when functioning at their peak. LSU's passing offense all year was overrated. They just passed a whole lot, so that's why they had some yards there. And then everyone else outside of maybe Clemson just wasn't all that great. And I just think that, whether it's due to opt-outs or maybe the month to prepare or the things they already mentioned, like coaching, that Illinois was going to take advantage here and win. And they did. That was one of the bowl games I got right. It's very hard to predict bowl games with all the opt-outs and different things. But it was refreshing to see Shane Beamer and Bret Bielema shake hands at the end of the game after their whole kerfuffle, after their whole almost fight that the refs had to corral Beamer for. I still find it funny that Bielema, if you're not watching on screen, just watch if you can. I'm doing the whole substitution pose. I thought that was hilarious. I thought that was absolutely hilarious by Bielema. Of course, not showing of good sportsmanship, and that's something that you want to show as good sportsmanship. But I also thought that was funny because what Illinois was doing in this game that I think also was a coaching genius move by Bielema is he was taking as long as he could with substitutions, and I think it was throwing South Carolina off because South Carolina wanted to substitute, but they also wanted to go fast while substituting. And Illinois, through the substitution rule and also through the fact that they did a much better job on the line of scrimmage than even Vegas. I mean, Vegas had this as the opening line was South Carolina minus 10.5. That meant that, Vegas is kind of thinking here that South Carolina should win this game at the minimum. Maybe not cover, but that they should win. And that right there, the line of scrimmage edge, was something I wasn't expecting. But that, along with Bielema being the better coach, which in my mind I was expecting, combined for a close Illinois win of 21-17. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel, and also hit that notification bell so that way you can get notified when new content from College Football with Sam drops. I appreciate you very much, and also share the video around to others who enjoy the sport of college football and love it as I do and as you do, and comment your thoughts down below so that we can have a conversation because I want to know what you are thinking. And join our Discord server where we talk college football 24/7 via the link in the description or down below in the pinned comment. Thank you to my Heisman Patreon members, Crash2488, Brasco Rascal, and Conlo OH. Thank you to my All-American Patreon members, Chris Lane, Ismar, and Tyler Nye. And thank you to my All-Conference members, John Lynn, Roaming Gnome, Matthew Sale, Austin Christmas, Joshua Jorgensen, and Will Loftus. Make sure to check out my merchandise store and or Patreon page or Super Chat down in the comment section below to support the channel. The Patreon page and merchandise store links are in the description or down below in the pinned comment. I hope you have a wonderful day. It is December, so Merry Christmas and also Happy New Year. I will see you guys soon.